are the three goddesses who determine the destiny of individuals and gods. The fates control the thread of life and shape the events of existence. In Greek mythology, the fates are a group of three goddesses who preside over destiny and control the thread of life for both mortals and gods. The fates are often depicted as weavers or spinners of fate, determining the course of human lives from birth to death. Clotho, the spinner, of course, Clotho, spinning cloth. She spins a thread of life, determining a person's birth and the events that will unfold. The second one is the Allotter. She measures the thread of life, determining the length and destiny of a person's life. Finally, the cutter. She cuts the thread of life, determining the moment of death and the end of a person's life. Interesting. The power of three. Three women with different roles that are dependent on each other. I notice there are a lot of stories around the subject of death, and I'm sure there is a whole book worth of stories out there. The sort of thing that happens around the time of death, clocks stopping, landlines ringing, there's no one there. No one speaking when you pick up the handset. Waking up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason, only to discover later that someone we cared deeply about has died at that exact time. Stories of a phone call to wake us up so we're already weirdly awake and in a better place to take the worst news from the next phone call, which is bringing news of a death. Sometimes people have reported a visit by the spirit of the recently deceased person to their bedroom before they even heard the news of their death. Triple ship sinking survivor story. Some people have such extreme life events that it's difficult to see how it can be anything but fate. Jessop was a nurse who survived 3 different ship sinkings. This nurse was on the Olympic, the Titanic and the Britannia and survived all 3 ship sinkings. It's an aeroplane story. A Dutch cyclist, Martin de Jong, escaped death not once but twice. He was meant to be on the missing Malaysia Airlines flight, the MH370, and he was also meant to be on the Malaysia flight MH17 that was shot down. Last-minute change of plans led to his life being saved. Sometimes there's a reminder from our guardian angels. Imagine being our guardian angels trying to communicate with us. How much in your face, straight up, bone-shaking coincidence does there have to be for you to A, acknowledge the event, and B, realise the importance and intelligence behind the event? One of my favourite motivators, self-help innovators, was Wayne Dyer, and it is with some sadness that I use the past tense. Wayne Dyer, along with Esther and Hicks, have long been world leaders in helping people to help themselves. Esther and Hicks are happy to communicate with infinite intelligence, they call it, drawing information from an unseen source to help us little humans out. In some of Esther Hicks' workshops, which can be found on YouTube and her website, abrahamhicks.com, people often tell stories of communication from the other side, or source, or people who are no longer living, or as Esther says, from people who have croaked. As I was writing this book, I was listening to a YouTube recording of one of the Abraham workshops, usually held on a cruise ship, which does look amazing. Here I was, in Essex, Southend-on-Sea to be precise, with a lot on my plate, too much to worry about, so I ran a lovely hot bath and settled down to an Abraham Hicks recording to help soothe my mind. There was a man speaking of his synchronistic experience he had, which involved Wayne Dyer. How wonderful. I was in exactly the right place at the right time. On my seemingly random YouTube offering, it was a suggestion from YouTube, not a recording I had chosen specifically. The man said he had been listening to Wayne Dyer tapes, and he had loved the recordings so much that he'd sent them out to a couple of friends and his sister with a request that they return the tapes rewound. This would save him a little time, leaving him less work to do before sending the tapes out to the next set of people he had on his list, who he felt would benefit from the beautiful, soothing, relaxing sound of Wayne Dyer's voice. This man, let's call him Dave, had sent the tape to his sister when she was alive. His sister had passed away 3 years to the day that he was looking at the tapes which had been returned to him. After the death of his sister, he hadn't got round to resending the tapes to other people. He felt the loss of his sister deeply, and as he looked at the tapes he realised the one tape from his sister hadn't actually been rewound. Dave put the tape into the cassette player and listened to the words being spoken by Wayne Dyer, who was talking about psychic awareness, telepathy, and the intuition that comes from just thinking about someone and then suddenly out of the blue hearing from them. And he heard Wayne speak the words. Just suppose you hadn't heard from your sister in 3 years. And Dave's sister had died 3 years ago to the day. Dave was still very upset about the loss of his sister. To him, hearing those words at that time wasn't proof enough, or evidential enough, that they weren't just a coincidence. So Dave sent up a prayer. "If you're there and you can hear me, send me a message." The next day, Dave received an unexpected letter through the mail from the Philippines, from a lady he'd been communicating with for years. Dave had been sending financial donations, and in return, the lady sent a report back to Dave, explaining that she'd bought trainers for her daughter or whatever she'd used his money for. She wrote and kept him posted. This day, the letter which arrived wasn't just the usual shopping list of what had been purchased. This letter had been written in capital letters, unlike the usual words the lady in the Philippines would have sent, along the lines of, "Thank you for everything you've done," and she signed it off, "Your eternal sister." Now Dave was absolutely blown away by that coincidence. He didn't feel it was simply coincidental. He felt that the lady from the Philippines had been used as a messenger by his sister. Dave was also amazed that by the time he had made the request, the letter was already in the post. Dave was so stunned that he contacted the lady in the Philippines in order to try and find out what had prompted her to write these foreign words out of the blue. Dave discovered there had been an earthquake in the Philippines, leading to the deaths of 3 people, his little lady being one of them, and he never found out why she wrote those words. And as Esther Hicks responded, this level of synchronicity, for source, infinite intelligence, is simply child's play.